love our opening
I
music.
do too. I love that we get to dance. This is the most exercise. No, I'm just, that would be so pathetic. Hi, everybody. Welcome to If These Walls Could Talk. I'm Wendy Stuart.
And I'm Tym Moss.
And we are so happy to have you all here with us today.
Yes.
Tym, how has your week been?
My week was unusually slow, believe it or not.
What?
I mean, I think the biggest thing was I went to the urologist.
Oh
that
my
was,
God.
Honey, that was the most action I've seen in a while, too.
How did that work out for you there? Everything was
it was great. Yeah, everything's fine.
Right.
Everything's where it should be.
Streaming along. Okay, but I know something very cool that happened to you this week.
What was that?
What would you do
I don't
without me to
remember.
remind you?
Right,
What
I
would
can't
you
remember.
do? Tim met a very famous person crossing the George Washington Bridge. No, that's a huge story.
No, actually, we didn't meet each other. I was just saying we just passed each other.
But that happened.
Right, but it was just, it's such a New York, it's one of those only in New York moments, because I have a show this Saturday where it's going to be Broadway. I'm rehearsing a bunch of Broadway songs, and I was doing this medley, and I walk over the George Washington Bridge and back. That's my exercise. And while I'm doing that, I exercise, or I vocalize and sing and rehearse my numbers. And I have, the tracks on my headphones. And I was just hitting like the top, the final note of Some Enchanted Evening, I think.
Oh, I love it.
And never let him go. And I'm holding this note, and this jogger comes by, and I'm like, oh my God, that's Lin-Manuel Miranda. And he looks at me as I'm holding this note, and he smiles and I smile, and we just kind of nod. And that was about it. But it was just such one of those quick, only shit like that happens in New York City. You know what I mean? So, but it was
love that.
And I've lived in Washington Heights for 40 years. And he lives in Washington Heights, and that was the first time we had encountered each other in 40 years.
But that's the thing about New York. You never know when you're going to run into somebody like that at any time.
And I just happened to be holding, this Broadway note as Mr. Broadway goes running by.
If anybody has any thoughts about that, like, in the universe, what all that means, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it probably has some meaning to it. Well,
and you have a show this weekend too.
I've got to promote
our show.
Right. We're all about promotion, but I can't promote anything till I get my earrings on.
Well, I will promote Pangea.
Yes,
Pangea. That's where we broadcast from every week. We are at the fabulous Pangea, 179. Well, it's between 11th and 12th on 2nd Avenue in the East Village. Incredible food. They have supported the arts. They have a cabaret room in the back. I've performed there. She's performed there. Our guest, I think, has performed there, but I've seen him there. Yes, he's performed there.
I am performing there this week with Ike Cavelli's 50 Shades of Gay, featuring myself, Kobe Cole, and
Jackie,
the beautiful Jackie.
Normally I'm with 50 Shades, but I have another show in the Bronx.
Right.
And that their show is going to be here at Pangea at 9:30.
We are at 9:30, and Tim would be in both places if he could, but you know what they say, you can't dance at both weddings with one tuchus. That's what they say. You never heard that one. There you go. And after, oh my God, this is the best. Everybody knows I've been celebrating my birthday since January 15th still. And the party continues on. We are having an after party here at Pangea. That's right. So when the show's over.
How many birthday cakes?
I'm having 2 birthday cakes. I'm having a whipped cream strawberry shortcake birthday cake. And I had to order a second cake for my amazing friend, Albert C. Penna, who I hope will be here. And that cake is going to be buttercream. Why, you ask, is it buttercream? Does Albert C. Penna like buttercream? We don't know, but Nick Lyon loves buttercream. So I did that special for him. So we're going to have 2 cakes. We have enough cake for everybody. If you're watching this broadcast, please come on down. The show's at 9:30. The cake will be at 11:15, and we're all going to have a grand old time, aren't we?
Now, I'm going to be in the Bronx at BAD, which is the Bronx Academy of Arts and Dance. And it's called, I believe it's called I Love More Movie, or I Love More Musicals. And it's Barbara Herr and I. Last year we did this with Michael Lynch, and Michael was not available this year, but we did it just streaming. So this year they wanted to repeat it with us live on stage with a live audience, and it will also be streaming. So you can go to badbronx.org. That's BAAD. Bronx.org.
Because you're
For tickets.
bad. Because you're bad. And I love that you're offering it both live and streaming. Last year,
Yeah, whatever you're comfortable with.
I loved Barbara Hare last year.
Oh,
I loved
God,
you at Lehman College. They performed. That was
Yep.
streamed, but it was really wonderful performance. And I just wish we could be at two places at once.
I do.
Oh my God, the dilemmas of performing, ladies and gentlemen. So speaking of performing,
performing does not get much better than our guest today.
And you know
Seriously.
what? Such an incredibly complex performer on so many levels. Today's guest is a playwright, an actor. They've written him up as a female impersonator. I don't even think that touches the surface because he has such a grasp on how he creates and sees women like nobody else does. So I absolutely love him to death.
But he's also a novelist,
Yep.
a cabaret performer, and like she said, a drag icon.
And how is all of this in one human being?
Well, let's find out.
We're going to find out. Let's welcome Charles Busch. Yay! We love Charles.
I'm exhausted hearing about me.
Oh, there's so much.
Do you ever tire of hearing about yourself?
Right.
Not really, no.
I love that. And I have to say, with every guest, I read. There was just so much on you. I actually wrote a timeline so I could figure out when you did which play and who was in what play. And honest to God, Charles, I had to give up after. I know all your big ones, but there was so much work in there. I had to give up after a while because I was getting them like all confused.
While I was setting up today, we have the table here with all of this, and she's setting up and putting out her notes on the table, and she goes, bring that table over. I had to get a second table to include all of her notes about your career. We have two tables full, a big table and a smaller table. So how are you doing, Charles?
Well,
That's an open-ended question.
But I do tend to think about all the events of my personal life according to what play I was doing when I generally do that. But I was thinking when you were talking about that incredible story about Lin-Manuel Miranda. I grew up in New York basically, and twice I ran into Greta Garbo.
Oh my God!
Twice.
Fabulous.
Is she really like the way they describe her, like Greta Garbo?
Not really. She, I guess it was when I was going to high school. So I think it was maybe 1969.
Wow.
I was one time it was near, up near Hunter College. I was walking around there. And then another time I was near where we lived in Murray Hill. And I was coming home from school, I think. And it was about, I think it was around 37th Street and Fifth Avenue. And I see, Garbo coming towards me. And I was so into classic film as an very young child. So I recognized her, and she was still incredibly beautiful in this very kind of sort of butch Scandinavian lesbian way.
Love it.
The butch Scandinavian lesbian type.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, she didn't wear a big floppy hat. She had her own hair, but it was the most beautiful color. It was like when the sun hit it, it was like blonde, auburn, brown, gray, all silvery mixed together, and
that is an interesting observation to me. That at that moment, that's what you took in, the variation.
The sun hit her hair, and she was in kind of it seemed like a cream-colored Mao jacket and matching pants, kind of, and just sort of striding, and then I followed her. She went into an Asian novelty store called Azuma. It was like a chain.
I remember Azuma. I love that place.
And I followed her into Azuma, and nobody was in the store, and so she and it was very nerve-wracking for me because I knew that she was very sensitive to being observed and would bolt. So I had to pretend like I wasn't staring at her. And at one point, we were on both sides of a table with Indian print bedspreads.
That's what they used to sell there, right?
Flipping through the spread and looking up, trying to look at her, and then our our eyes met, and so I kind of took one of the bedspreads, kind of looked at her like, what do you,
Oh.
she kind of, I read into that she was actually saying, well, they're 2 for 1. So if one has to go to the cleaners, you should get the second one. So I read that into her eyebrow.
Greta Garbo, you had an eye for a bargain. That absolutely made my day. I would have never figured that.
I'm sure that's what she was indicating by that kind of.
Absolutely.
But, let me
2
see
for 1, you get one, extra one.
So now, Charles, you were, early. I think so much about your early childhood really interested me because you lost your mom at a very young age, 7 years old, and as we're close in age. As a kid, and I'm sure for you too, I used to have these nightmares about what will happen if I lose my mother. It's way different when you're a little kid than when you're older and you have coping skills. So there you were in 7 years of age. Were you this creative kid then? What was Charles like at 7?
Or how did you
process?
How did you cope with that?
Yeah.
Well, I was a very creative kid. I'm kind of like, basically I was totally me at 3. I just, yeah. And in a way, it's funny. I hadn't really thought about this until you mentioned it just now. It's just that I think maybe because I spent so much time in my own imagination and drawing and even writing a bit, I guess, or just lost in my own, just fantasy world. I think in a way, maybe that was helpful in dealing with such terrible loss. I was kind of, what's the word, self-possessed. I mean, I just, you were
into your own head and your own thing, and in a way, that's a wonderful thing to have because you can
during such trauma.
Yeah, you can take that creative energy and really channel it.
And I think also I feel like at a very early age, I became so divided into being able to be both in any situation, and it's true to this day. I'm both participant and observer at the same time. I mean, when anything awful happens to me or even wonderful happens to me, I'm always kind of immediately kind of assessing the situation and what's going to happen. And it's troubling at times. I sometimes feel like I lack the ability of being genuinely exhilarated by good news. When I have a play open, and on the occasions when we've gotten just a rave review and it's so thrilling and everybody's jumping up and down and all that, I'm thrilled and everything, but I'm kind of thinking, oh, well, what does this really mean? Will this really help the box office? And oh boy, I'm gonna have to really step it up because I'm gonna have to do this 8 times a week and have the energy.
Wow.
Right.
So I'm already thinking about that, and I wish I wasn't that way. I wish I wasn't.
Yeah, it's difficult for you to be in the present of exhilaration or
I feel like I was that way though, so young. I think even with my mother's death, in a way, I think already I was like, so what happens to us now? That kind of feeling.
So you're this creative kid. You're growing up in Ardsley, Westchester, which I told you my cousins were all there, and my family's buried in Ferncliff. It's a very pretty very suburban place. You were definitely out of the box at a very young age. So what were you experiencing that time in terms of school? I mean, did teachers get you? Did your other classmates get you?
I don't think any, in my entire academic career from kindergarten to through college, I'd say there were maybe 3 teachers who thought I had something to offer.
Wow.
Yeah, I sound bitter. I am.
No, you know what? There is a point here. I totally can connect to that, and I'm sure Tim can too. And the people I know now that are such successful creative people. They definitely didn't fit. All right. They were never the teacher's pets.
Not a lot of support.
Not a lot of support. Nobody knew what my mother, we didn't know what to do with you. Like they had some alien child, you know, we didn't know what to do with you. But I love having this conversation with you because you are so successful in the genres that you want to be successful in. You understand? And that thing that you said about being both in the thing and then observing the thing, you're an actor, but you're also a playwright. That is,
and producer.
And
That's
producer.
really telling. That's really telling because I
Right.
mean, I think if I was only an actor, I think maybe I would be more in the moment. But as a writer, I'm creating the world around me. Yeah, and I think in a way, it's interesting. Because one of the things I love about being an actor playwright, and you know, there aren't that many of us around.
No,
It's just that it's so wonderful to have this experience of creating this world, and for that 2 hours, everyone is behaving exactly as you wish. You know? It doesn't happen in real life. Everybody has their own mind. So yeah, I'm controlling kind of the world that I'm in the center of, and I prefer that. I've also, you know, I've written plays that I'm not in, you know, but I like it better when I'm in the middle of it. And it's
because that is, I never thought of it that way, but you control the emotions,
right.
You control the happenings,
or the narrative. I'm controlling it all. Yeah, it's a wonderful feeling.
It is the perfect fantasy world, you know, where you are the star. You can do it all. So
it really is, and everybody's behaving very well.
But now, when it came to support, now when did you move into your Aunt Lilith's?
Aunt Lillian,
Aunt Lillian, I'm sorry, yes.
I like Lilith, though. That's very
I
classic.
do. I love that you
change the story.
that in the universe.
Maybe I should make her Aunt Lilith. Yeah.
Lilith.
Well, I was always, you know, thing is, you know, my mother was quite fragile, you know, and she died at the age of 41. And I think and my aunt was her oldest sister, and she was, Aunt Lillian, I think, was about 13 years older than my mother.
Mm-hmm.
So she was always trying to make life easier for my mother. And so I'm the youngest I have two older sisters. And so I think from a very early age, I was spending so many weekends in New York City with my aunt, you know, just to kind of make things easier. And then my aunt and I had just this incredible connection. And I think she, it was this mutual fascination. It was kind of like if Auntie Mame and Patrick, if young Patrick was just as flamboyant as Auntie Mame. I mean, we were kind of two Auntie Mames together, so we found each other fascinating.
That's what I mean, and having her to kind of nurture that part of you.
Yeah, so I think it's funny. It's easy for me in the past to think, it be sort of one-sided, but how fortunate I was to have this lady who found me so intriguing. But on the other side of it, I'm thinking it must have been how wonderful it must have been for her to have this little boy who saw things in such an original way. And I think she was so taken with my creativity, and basically anything I did was genius, you know. And
in a way, her protege,
right? And her protege. It's interesting how she engineered you at the time, because what was fascinating to me, school wasn't going great for you, and they wanted you to repeat the grade, which is, you know, I'm a mom. That is devastating for a kid. That is like, not only was the kid ostracized in the year they were supposed to be at, now it's going to be double. You get left back. And there was Aunt Lil. She jumped in, she tutored you, and she made sure that you passed everything, no matter how. It was hard for you to do that.
Yeah, no, I really wasn't scholastic. You know, I could focus. I had incredible concentration on the things that interested me.
Right.
You know, reading about, you know, theater history or whatever. But but yeah, actual school work didn't
Mhm.
really interest me, and I wasn't. I guess as a gay kid, I mean there was a certain amount of bullying, a bit, but not like some of the other kids. I think there was something a bit aloof about me, and I think you're bullied even more. I think if bullies sense in you a need to be included, a need
Right.
to be part of things, and I was a bit of a cool customer, and so I don't know. Maybe does it make sense, or maybe I'm just.
Absolutely.
Oh, we all know
Absolutely.
cool and aloof works. It's certainly
I
been.
didn't really care. I found them all rather dreary, so I never particularly wanted to be a part of the group,
Right.
and then I was always spending every weekend from a very young age in New York City, um, and my aunt was sending me to, before I ever moved in with her, she was sending me to acting class on Saturdays in New York City, and so my friends, my friends really were my New York friends on the weekends. That's who those were my great friends, and including Andy Halliday, who I'm still friends with, who's in some of my plays. We met at theater camp when we were 14.
Oh my God, I love that.
14, but that's who my friends were. So yeah, I was always kind of protected that way. I wasn't this person who was at the mercy of this suburban school. But then but I was doing so bad, as you said, I was doing so badly, and then when my aunt learned that I was going to be left back, she really stepped in, and I moved in with her ostensibly just for that summer, going before ninth grade, to see if I could go to pass classes in summer school. And then I was so kind of freaked out that she had to figure out a way of me to stay in New York City and not have to go back to Westchester. And somehow I got into the High School of Music and Art as an art major because I draw well. And
by the way, I applied the same year you did. I didn't get in.
Art as it was.
All these years, I have to tell you that I didn't get in.
Were you as in music? Was that you were singing?
I did art, and this is so awful. I was so I was a kid from the Bronx and so not together. I went and traced drawings from books. I know, I'm horrifying everybody. I did.
Honey, you do what you gotta do
because
to get
you know
by.
what, I didn't really have a portfolio, and
Right.
and of course I didn't get in. I did get into art and design. My mother didn't want me riding the train there, and I ended up in Walton High School across the street from where I grew up, which was absolutely horrible life school. I think my school, maybe 15 kids went on to college. Can you imagine? I know.
Wow.
Charles is laughing. That's funny. I made him funny.
But
Yeah. The music and art, did you start to thrive when you got
I
in
would
there?
imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just good for me to. Music and Art in 1968 was just the hippie school of all time. And I remember one time, my aunt just was so fascinated. Every day I'd get home from school and she'd say, "Well, what happened today?" And I'd say, "Oh, well, today was it was fuck school day." And so it just so what yeah, it was like very bohemian hippie school, and there was no gym class. I mean, it was heaven. Yeah. It's so different from the suburban school that I'd gone to. That was
exactly.
more
And again, going from that environment to just total creative support and encouragement, that would be amazing.
And all kids.
I was also a bit freaked out too, though. I'd never really been on the subway alone, and Music and Art was in kind of a scary neighborhood
By City College, where.
College, yeah. And then we were warned, don't go down this street.
Right.
Don't go. So I mean, there was a lot to adjust to, but ultimately it was just fantastic. And but then I also, every Saturday I was in this acting class. My aunt had sent me to this, she was always sending me to rather esoteric summer camps that catered to the imaginative
child
boy with recherche taste. And so I went a couple summers to. I think I sort of imagined it, and basically I think she would tell me that she'd be doing some volunteer work somewhere, or taking a French class or whatever, and talked to some other woman who also had a sensitive little boy with special tastes and sophistication, and where are you sending your boy to camp? Oh, well, so they would all talk about where their boys would go. So like I went to this one summer camp in North Carolina that was all designed on Grecian themes.
Okay.
I mean, it was fabulous. I went there a couple summers. Then there was a series of showbiz camps, and finally the one I went to was called Beginner Showcase in New Hampshire, and that's where I met Andy and the very flamboyant Cuban director of the camp, artistic director, taught acting classes in the city during the winter. And so a whole group of us from that summer camp who lived in the New York, the tri-state area, we would take classes, and I did that for several years, and that's really where my social life was with
absolutely. And the thing that I love, now this is kind of fast forwarding a little bit, but in so many of your shows, like you were mentioning Andy, that you still will have Andy perform with you, and you're very loyal, very loyal to your friends. Like a lot of times you have the same actor, they're the same people involved in the projects as you go along, and I just love that. I think that's so cool.
Tim is very much, we both are, but Tim always covers the people that he loves and works with, and in this industry it's really important to do that, but you also learn trust with your actors.
I don't know, I don't really think of it as loyalty as much as just they're all very good, right. And I just really love writing roles for very interesting, quirky, but very talented people.
Right.
And I just think it's really important to surround yourself with talented people.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes it's a problem with, when young people today ask me, Wendy and Tim, when they ask me, just for advice or something, and they think it's all about, oh, you have to know somebody famous to make it. And I said, well, I think it's also important really to cultivate talented people, your peers, and who are struggling like you are, but just hook on to the talented people. Yeah. So, yeah. And so like, and sometimes you don't really know, like Julie Halston,
I love Julie Halston. They said
when I first met Julie, though, she was terrible. She'll tell you she was terrible. She was working on Wall Street as a corporate librarian for a very fancy investment firm, and just with vague notions of being a performance artist, as she'd say. And but then we were doing. I was going to be doing this little skit in the East Village that I called Vampire Lesbians of Sodom, and no woman I knew would do this with me, in this bar on Avenue C. And the last one on my list was that blonde girl that I met once who works on Wall Street. And I was kind of hoping she'd say no, and she said yes. But then it turned out that she just had such a wonderful big personality that that I started changing the lines around to suit her and to put in actually just phrases that she would use in life. And then she got the confidence to to be herself, and then then became this very skilled actress. But back to me.
I love about Julie.
She's doing fine. No, we don't have to talk about her.
Right.
Yes, but
I like working. I really love writing for specific people.
Well, that was what I was that was the next question that I had, was because when you're writing, you have specific people in mind, like, oh my God, I could see them saying this or doing this. And
yeah, it's fun. Well, really, particularly in the past 10 years or more. It's really always been that case. Is I actually I figure out what part do I want to play, and is it a movie genre? Is it like, oh, I want to be Barbara Stanwyck in a mother love melodrama or something, and then I write a list of people that I adore hanging out with who are very talented, and I then thought, okay, well, how do I fit Jennifer into the story. Well, she could be,
Yeah.
and what about, Christopher? Oh, he could be so and so. And so then, and I kind of evolved the narrative around
Wow.
that,
The characters.
the
Yeah.
characters. And
I love that.
yeah, and so it's fun. There are no problems, no backstage drama.
Yeah.
Right from the start, I adore them all.
Right, but you have to really have a way of being able to see into people that lets you know it's going to work with them. Like Julie Halston was not a typical background, right? She's working as a librarian. That's not somebody that's going to pop out as someone that can carry a show. And yet you saw something there. You had to have seen something.
Well, she had a big personality. Everybody, the people that I've written for, for the most, either their own persona is so, set that it's kind of like, well, Julie, okay, she could be sort of an Eve Arden, John Blondell sidekick, or they're just like Jennifer Van Dyke, who I've worked with a lot, is just such a highly skilled actress, classical actress, that she could do it. But even there, it's like in the last few years, I had always had men in drag, play female characters in my plays, but really had never done the reverse and had women play male parts. But then since I've been working with Jennifer, who has a kind of a Katharine Hepburn quality to her, that I started writing roles where she could play their trouser roles, as they used to call them.
Yeah.
The woman who wears the pants.
Yes, and and at one point, I think the first one I wrote for her was first male role was in a little play we did at Theater for the New City. I think it was a biblical epic, Judith of Bethulia, and she was the young poet, adventurer, and she wasn't quite sure how I saw it, and I think the instinct was sort of play it kind of butch, and I said, no, it's I want you to just imagine you're a great stage actress of the 20s who's playing Romeo, but she's still a great actress that we see, so you don't have to really be convincingly a guy. It's a romantic version of a woman playing the young poet. And so I've written a lot of those parts for her, and it's kind of fun. I'm really enjoying, the other side of having women play male roles.
Well, now, backing up, you mentioned Vampire Lesbians of Sodom. Let's go back, because that was kind of the beginning, or when you really stepped onto the scene.
That was the big break, right?
Right.
After many years, I really paid my dues. I spent about 10 years in vaudeville, basically, from when I graduated Northwestern in '76, and then my big break was in '85. So that's like nine years. Yeah. And I just knew that I was such an odd type, and there was no Torch Song Trilogy or
Waiting for You,
or Angel in America, or any of these plays that had were so groundbreaking and had roles for an androgynous young man, but none of those had been written yet. And I thought that I'm not there's not going to be any career for me if I'm just trying to be a journeyman actor. And then when I saw people like Charles Ludlam and writer performers, I thought, well, since I always wrote, why not just write a role for myself? And that is all the things that make me unemployable will be an asset.
You worked with Charles Ludlam, right?
Just a bit, just a little bit.
What was that like?
Well, I was a great fan of his. I saw him at a very young age. I thought he was just fascinating, and he was just brilliant. And I didn't really. My fantasy wasn't really to work with them or even to be friends with them. I really just wanted him to think I was talented. That basically was it. Yeah. And when I came back to New York in '78, because after I graduated, I spent 2 years in Chicago trying to figure out how am I going to be a a drag playwright. I mean, it's like it doesn't the obvious thing of step 1, step 2, step 3. But so it took me a while. But then I became a solo performer. I started because I thought, well, I don't know anybody, and to get a play put on is very difficult.
Yeah.
But if I do a solo show, I can perform at the duplex or something. So I started out that way, just not in drag, but just creating these solo plays where I played all the characters, male and female, in a narrative, and do the dialogue back and forth in some cases. And I was also influenced by a wonderful, brilliant performer named Jeff Weiss, who was a great downtown artist, a solo performer. Anyway, I was able to get Charles Ludlam to see me to do my act one night at the duplex, I guess. Or yeah, it might have been duplex, or maybe it was, oh no, I think it was actually a place called Scene 1 on Hudson Street. Anyway, he had his own theater on Sheridan Square, and he was very generous and said I should do my shows, midnight shows, on weekends at his theater after his performance. And so I did that for a few weeks. I was totally unknown. Nobody really showed up. Why would they?
At midnight.
I wasn't reviewed or anything, but it was just nice to be in the same place for a couple of weeks.
And
Absolutely.
then the recognition,
One question I have is when did the gender bending, the drag, when did that appear in your life?
Well, in stages, because first, when I was in Chicago, right after graduation, I started writing movie pastiche pieces that I performed in. There was a new wave sort of club called La Mer Vipère in Chicago, and I was able to get them to let me, do some shows there at 7:00 before
Nice.
the guests came in.
It beats midnight.
Yeah. So I started a little theater company in Chicago, and that with just kind of all the wrong people. But it was the mirror opposite of what ended up being my experience later on. But I started this little theater group, and I wrote a play for us that was a homage of women's pictures from the 30s called Myrtle Pope, the story of a woman possessed. And I played Myrtle Pope. Yeah, and so we booked this little play. It was short. It was like under an hour. It just all these different bars and clubs and straight, gay. And then there was a local movie theater, and I persuaded the owner of that theater to let us do our show after the last screening of the movie. I mean, I really tried every which way.
Love that. That's being creative.
So I was playing drag then, but then when I became a solo performer, it seemed best, since I was playing so many characters, talking back and forth, that not to use any costumes or props at all, and just have it was you had to really be careful, because you never wanted the audience to be confused. And I learned so much about exposition as a writer, all these things, just so that there never could be a second that an audience was thinking, oh, who is he now? Or
right.
You had to, and you didn't want to be hokey about it, but you had to be within seconds. The audience had to know who I am, where I am, in relationship with who I'm speaking to.
Right.
So that was very.
How did you? Brilliant. It's brilliant. And even as you're speaking, because now we're getting into left brain, right brain. How did you do that? I guess, for lack of a better word, how did you keep that all straight in your head? That line of demarcation between the characters when there was one person playing them, which it was you.
Well, at Northwestern, there was a separate department aside from theater that was actually very respected. It was called the Department of Interpretation, and it was very much about performing prose fiction, and there were certain techniques that you learned about, that each character, if you have multiple characters in a scene, that each character should have a focus in a certain direction. So if I'm, the countess, she's talking here. If I'm the young peasant girl, she's talking here. If I'm the old fisherman, he's talking here. So that does help the audience right away when you're.
So it's as if you're using the space. Okay, you're breaking it into 3 different quadrants, and you have a focus in each one. Use that as your line.
Then that's when I started doing it myself in a theater space. My directors, because I always worked with the director, we would figure out just different ways of elaborating on that. Where I would, I'd be talking as one character, and then I'd spin around and then it would be almost like a movie cut,
right?
And I'd be someone else, and it was really interesting thing. And it's kind of a pity in a certain sense that my career took off in drag, playing one character just when I really was kind of going in an interesting direction with the solo work. And it was also sometimes it got a little frustrating that my solo material, because after 9 years evolving this, I was getting into rather personal material and different kind of character, different styles and all that, and it was getting really quite rich. And then when I started Theater in Limbo and was doing all these movie pastiche plays, and people would say to me, like particularly like the plays after Vampire Lesbians, Psycho Beach Party or Lady in Question or whatever, people would say, you've grown so much since Vampire Lesbians. And I thought, I was more complicated before Vampire Lesbians. Nobody just ever saw it, but were personal and taking stuff from my own life, and so it was it's just that if you're going to do a play on Avenue C in a bar, you're gonna not get too complicated. A simple entertainment.
Right.
So that used to kind of just frustrate me a bit. But I was doing drag in Chicago, and then things didn't work out with that little theater group. They thought that I was holding them back. That somehow I was, I sort of saw their point. The fact was that I liked being the star. It was my idea to have this theater company, and I was good. The idea was that I was going to be the female lead in these plays that I wrote, and they all seemed to like the idea until I was the only one getting a laugh.
No, I mean, thank you for
go over well.
Thank you for putting that out there. It was your idea. You started it. You had every right, of course, to be the.
And you're writing. You're creating.
These parts of them all, but it was interesting in that case. We were not of the same mind, and they really a lot of them really resented me, and then it all kind of came out and at kind of an encounter group where everybody had to talk about how they felt about each other, and it was clear they all adored each other, and all of them found me impossible. And then I thought, well, okay, it's time for me to move back to New York.
Too many chefs in the kitchen.
Right, but Charles, would make a brilliant play. While you're talking about it, we've all been in similar positions.
Oh, yeah?
When the herd turns on you.
Oh, it's terrible. When you're kicked out of your own group. Nothing worse. Nothing worse. It's terrible when you're kicked out of your own group. I'm still not really over it, to be honest with you.
No, but it's important to talk about these things because it happens. Yeah. And it's about navigating your way past that, and rising up from it.
Well, yes, because some people are destroyed by it.
Mm-hmm.
Some people think like, oh, well, I feel betrayed. I feel this or that.
Right. And will withdraw or even leave the profession.
No, I was very defiant. I was Scarlett O'Hara. As God is my witness. As God is my witness, I am going to pursue this career, and I will not be put down by non-union actresses who final bow.
They're not gonna tell me what to do.